Helena is a 20-year-old astronaut who has spent almost her entire life aboard the Orbiter 9. Scientists on Earth have sent her on a mission to the ostensibly habitable planet Celeste due to factors such as overpopulation, global warming, and a toxic environment. It is estimated that she will take another 20 years to reach the planet. Helena was brought to the spaceship as an infant by her parents, who raised her there. However, 3 years ago, a system malfunction caused the Orbiter 9's oxygen supply to deplete rapidly. As a result, her parents made the difficult decision to do the unthinkable in order for their daughter to have enough oxygen to reach the nearest outpost. Helena has spent the last 3 years alone on the spaceship in this manner. Her daily routine includes watering her vegetables, exercising, checking her health, and thinking about her parents. She's even having trouble breathing by this point, as her oxygen supply is nearly depleted. One day, the spaceship's alarm goes off, which concerns Helena because it is the first time she has experienced such an event. She rushes over to the control room to inspect and discovers that a shuttle has joined her spaceship. It appears that her distress call was finally answered. Helena rushes to the door, and when it opens, an engineer named Alex walks in. She is both surprised and delighted to see him, as it has been 3 years since her last interaction with anyone. Alex introduces himself and begins inspecting the oxygen system, but Helena can't take her gaze away from him, possibly because she has never seen a man her age before. Helena invites Alex to dinner a few hours later, while Alex is busy with the repairs. Later, during dinner, Helena asks a lot of questions, but Alex is cold for some reason. He simply states that he must complete his work and return to his outpost. Alex successfully repairs the oxygen system the next day and prepares to leave. Helena enters his room quietly that night while he is sleeping and climbs on top of him. Alex wakes her up and asks her to get down while she is staring. Helena, who has been alone her entire life, says it could be another 20 years before she sees anyone again. She then slowly kisses him, and the two soon have a coitus. The next morning, Alex packs his belongings and leaves without even saying goodbye to Helena. He exits the spaceship and enters a strange hallway before making his way upstairs. Surprisingly, he emerges from what appears to be a bunker in the middle of the woods. We learn here that the Orbiter 9 is not, in fact, a spaceship, and that the entire thing is being staged on Earth. Alex then gets in his truck and drives through the woods, which appears to be a top-secret facility. There are clearly more bunkers like Helena's, and the entire operation is known as Project Orbiter. Alex soon arrives at the entrance, which is heavily guarded by military personnel. That evening, he travels to the base of operations, where he meets the project manager, Hugo. Hugo pulls out his tablet and shows Alex some statistics, which reveal that there are, in fact, 10 orbiters. He claims that progress is being made, and that if everything continues at the same rate, the real launch to Celeste could happen within the next 20 years. Despite the good news, Alex is disturbed because he is concerned about the 10 test subjects who have been isolated in the orbiters. Hugo, on the other hand, tells him that sacrificing 10 people for the sake of humanity is the right thing to do. As Alex is driving home at night, a news report announces that it has been 5 years since the Celeste spaceship disaster. On that fateful night, the spaceship, which was carrying 207 crew members, suffered a sudden mechanical failure shortly after leaving Earth's atmosphere. As a result, the plane crashed, killing everyone on board. The spaceship's chief engineer is revealed to be none other than Alex himself. He has been plagued by guilt and sorrow ever since the incident, as not only did several people die, but humanity also suffered a major setback in their quest for Celeste. The next morning, Alex meets with his therapist, Sylvia, who conducts her sessions on a futuristic screen. People on both sides can't see each other because of this screen, and their original voices are distorted. They can only see a computerized wolf that mimics their facial movements. Unable to hide his depression any longer, Alex tells Sylvia about his job and how he feels bad for the 10 test subjects. Alex becomes increasingly paranoid as the days pass. He watches Helena videos and live feeds on a regular basis, implying that he can't get her out of his head. Then, one day, he decides to put it all on the line. He climbs into his car and drives to the facility. Meanwhile, inside the Orbiter 9, Helena is having her regular health checkup when the alarm goes off once more. Helena is surprised because her spaceship is far from any outpost. Soon after, the front door opens, revealing a casually dressed Alex. He immediately informs her that they are not in a spaceship and that they must flee, but Helena remains silent in fear. Alex uses a hidden camera and a microchip implanted inside Helena to track her vital organs to prove his point. He also informs her that he is acting in her best interests. Helena is still stunned, but because she has a crush on Alex, she agrees to accompany him. Alex hacks the camera feed and uploads an older recording of Helena before fleeing, so no one suspects their escape. After that, the two leave the Orbiter 9. Helena is dazed and has difficulty walking when she steps out of the bunker for the first time, as she is exposed to sunlight and fresh air for the first time. Alex then hides her inside his truck and gets her past the entrance checkpoint. Later, he stops by a hill and tells all about the Orbiter program and how it came to be. The program was created to familiarize a human with space in preparation for the upcoming launch of Celeste. He also tells Helena that her parents are still alive, but when she expresses her desire to meet them, he declines. It turns out that her parents are also involved in the project. Soon after, the two arrive at Alex's house, and Helena is surprised to see normal household items. She is also delighted when she sees Rain for the first time. The next day, Alex pays a visit to Sylvia and informs her of his actions. Concerned for her client's safety, Sylvia reveals her true self to Alex and promises to assist him if things go wrong. Alex takes Helena out that night and shows her around the city. He buys her a variety of meals, something she has never had in her isolation. When Helena mentions the sea, he takes her to an aquarium and introduces her to various fish. The next morning, Alex takes Helena to his private office, which is outfitted with a slew of computers. He explains that it is where he keeps an eye on the orbiters and monitors their progress. Helena, clearly distressed by the invasion of privacy, asks Alex how he could be involved in such an inhumane act, to which the latter responds that it is for the betterment of humanity. They could send a real spaceship to Celeste in the coming years using all of the data and statistics gathered from the Orbiter project. Alex then takes Helena to a nightclub and introduces her to his friends. Dr. Zhao, a well-known physician, is one of them. He inquires about Helena's hometown, but before she can respond, Alex fabricates an excuse and changes the subject. He is determined to keep Helena's identity hidden at all costs. After a while, the group discusses the Orbiter program's implications and how it can benefit humanity in the long run. Alex believes that progress is being made, but Dr. Zhao believes that instead of looking for a new planet, people should concentrate on making Earth a better place. Alex notices some rashes on Helena's back one day and takes her to his friend, Dr. Zhao. Zhao examines Helena superficially and discovers that her skin is extremely sensitive, as if she has never been out in the sun. He then sends her for a thorough examination and questions Alex about her true identity. Zhao suspects she has a connection to the Orbiter program, and Alex finally reveals anything. Helena enters his room that evening, while Alex is away, and begins going through his files. She discovers something shocking in one of these files. It turns out that she is a clone rather than an offspring. She then turns some pages and discovers the address of her surrogate parents. She gathers her belongings and heads outside to find her parents, devastated by the revelation and the fact that Alex lied to her. Later, when Alex returns home, she learns that Helena has discovered the truth about her genetics. He is visibly upset, but he is powerless to find her. Helena locates her parents and confronts them for abandoning her. The mother, who appears to care, informs Helena that, despite being a clone, she possesses the genetics of people from different centuries, making her extremely healthy. Just then, Helena's father comes up behind her and cuffs her to the railing. He then contacts Hugo, but the mother knocks him out and assists Helena in escaping. She meets up with Alex a few hours later and berates him for keeping the truth from her. Alex simply apologizes and hugs her, with no words to defend himself. But the trouble has only just begun. Alex and Helena pack their belongings and flee after learning that Hugo and his people have learned of their escape. Hugo meets with Catherine, the Orbiter project's main benefactor, the next day to brief her on the situation. As expected, the boss is dissatisfied because one of her most valuable assets has escaped. Catherine orders Hugo to find Helena and kill her when he asks for a solution. In other news, Alex takes Helena to her longtime confidant, Sylvia, and requests a place for her to stay. Sylvia, being the gracious woman that she is, gladly accepts, but before she can accompany them out, she hears a knock on her door. Hugo and two armed soldiers are on the lookout for Helena outside. He discovered Sylvia's business card while rummaging through Alex's apartment. The men then barge inside and begin looking around. They soon arrive at one of the therapy booths, unaware that the couple is on the other side. Hugo then instructs Sylvia to begin the screen, and as soon as she does, Alex and Helena become immobile. They don't even blink because doing so would cause the wolf simulation to move and blow their cover. This goes on for a while, until Sylvia refuses to hand over the couple and is shot dead by one of the soldiers. This terrorizes the couple on the other side, and they flee immediately. The couple then manages to stay one step ahead of the bad guys during an intense chase on the rooftops. They are eventually cornered, however, when they reach a dead end. With no other options, Alex suggests jumping to another terrace. He goes first, but when Helena's turn comes, she freezes in fear and is apprehended. Alex can only stand there and watch Hugo and his men take her away. That night, a distraught Alex returns to the same nightclub and approaches his friend, Zhao, who was also beaten up by Hugo and his men. Zhao expresses his concern for Alex and mentions that Helena's test results are now available. Unfortunately, she is unable to remain in this environment and must return to the Orbiter 9 immediately. Alex is devastated by the news, but an idea occurs to him. Meanwhile, Hugo approaches Catherine and asks if he can re-enroll Helena in the Orbiter program. She, on the other hand, refuses, claiming that it will cost them a lot of money. She then orders him to kill Helena right away so that the news doesn't spread. Hugo begins the euthanasia process in accordance with the orders. But before he can end it all, Alex appears outside the building and offers Hugo a deal. Despite the fact that the latter has already decided to murder Helena, he still invites Alex inside for the sake of their friendship. Without further ado, Alex informs Helena that she is pregnant with his child, a child who could be crucial to their project. He then suggests that Helena be allowed to return to the orbiter with him so that they can both raise their child in the environment. This would produce the ideal astronaut, who would lead the real spaceship to Celeste after 20 years. Surprisingly, Hugo likes the idea and agrees to let the couple return to the orbiter. 20 years have passed in the final scene. Hugo, now old, stands outside Orbiter 9, waiting for a girl, presumably Alex and Helena's daughter, to emerge from her bunker. The girl smiles at someone behind her before looking up at the sky. The film concludes with the sound of a spaceship preparing to take off for Celeste, indicating that the experiment was successful.